Hi everyone. I just wanted to make this video about my elf list that won the May monthly tournament. This is the Facebook tournament, the paper tournament. I also play online, however. So I wanted to share this. I haven't been playing in the June, July, or August monthlies just because I had a newborn, so I've kind of been my attention's been directed towards that. I haven't really been able to sign up or play much competitive Magic lately. So, or that is if you can call this competitive Magic. But anyway, I'd like to share this because I'm hoping that somebody out there can learn from this, or someone out there maybe can continue to improve this list. I really love this list, and if you can take sort of my what I did with this list and improve off that, that'd be wonderful. And I'd also love to have some discussions about this. So if you want to talk on the there's an Alf Discord. You if you want to talk to me on there, there's an Alf Discord. I believe you can join called Gay as Cradle, and then there's a Premodern section if you want to chat there. I also will post the link to this video there. So yeah, happy to discuss. I did change the list a lot since then, so I am going to upload another video, which I will link to in this video, which describes my more updated list. But I think I'll talk about that in another video. So I'll just go over with what I won with here, even though I did actually make quite a bit of changes to this deck already. So 18 lands. You can run 17 as well. 17 lands is sort of isn't bad. It's possible, but I sort of just wanted to try the 18. 17 lands. I ran the stats on that, and it's actually it could be something I do, but I just find like I don't need necessarily another spot of anything else. This is kind of fine. I might cut another land for a third wall of roots, so I haven't actually done that yet, but I do actually think that you can go 17 lands pretty safely. The amount of percentage points I believe isn't going to be as it's not going to be it's going to be more beneficial, I think, to have some other option in this deck. Anyway, pretty typical elf list. Four of all of these one drops. There are of course the two wall of roots here, which I'll discuss. I think that's pretty much the only. There's a main deck sharpshooter, and that's just because it used to be in the board, and I wanted more space in the board for things, and but I did take that out. That is no longer. That is what I tried for that particular tournament, the May monthly that I won. That this is the winning deck list. But again, one of the reasons why I'm making this video in the first place is because I want to explain things that I might have implemented that I don't believe necessarily are still correct today. So I don't think the sharpshooter I put in to make room in the sideboard, like I said, but it really underperformed. There are situations where it's good. It's good in Alf mirrors, and that's actually about it. Honestly, it's good. There's some strange, tier two decks where it's okay against them as well. But like there's some decks that try to play, what like they just play some one drops, like other sort of one drop decks and things like that. But you don't really see them very often. So most of the time, Masticore is just fine. And the problem is this. I thought it might be useful. It's useful against burn, but really, like, it's good to kill the Lava Mancer. It can kill the ball lightning, but really Masticore can do that, and this just is pretty useless in most cases. So I cut it. But I don't think, for the record, it's good. Um, okay, so I want to save the wall of root discussion for last. That's why I'm over here. Otherwise, it's pretty typical. I do believe that the main, if you've watched any of the videos of me of the matches that have been streamed, then one, you'll see why Biorhythm is really good. It gives you another line to play down, like another way you can win. So you can potentially just win out of nowhere if you have like a Priest of Titania, even though deranged Hermit may not be able to get the job done in time, or Kamal, but just dropping a biorhythm and winning can often just get the job done, especially if you've got like a priest down. It's quite easy to get to 8 mana if you've got a priest they haven't been able to deal, they're not able, your opponent's not able to deal with, which does happen quite frequently. So, especially if you've got a Wirewood symbiote down too, it's often they're going to try to, this acts sort of like a lightning rod for all their removal, and then you might be able to keep one of these around, and then especially with survival you might be able to, you can have these plays where you search for a priest, play a priest with survival, then you can go off with biorhythm. It's quite easy with Quirion Ranger and priest, and a few other elves, like even just this and another elf, like even if you have Finhorn, let's say Quirion and priest. Keep in mind, Quirion taps the Priest of Titania, so that's 6 mana, right? 2 times 3, and then usually I'll have like 2 lands, and that's fine. So even 3 lands and maybe a Wall of Roots can also get the job done here and there. I guess that'd be 4 lands, but that often happens too. Or a Cradle even, Cradle, a Cradle and a land and a Wall of Roots and a Priest and a Quirion, or So it's quite easy to play, and it's also it gives you a hope against certain decks that, like, you do have an option of winning with this card early in the game. It is possible. There are draws where you can do it on turn 3, and sometimes you have to hope for, like, sometimes just having that option is helpful against decks like the Pandemonium deck. No, not Pandemonium. The I call it that, but it's attunement, and replenish. The attunement replenish deck, the being able to race those combo decks, and even that, and like, Hermit Druid decks, it's very good to have the biorhythm possibilities. And not only that, it's another finisher. Like, you could stack up deranged hermits. I mean, you don't really want to run 4 deranged hermits, so. But even if you had a third hermit, you don't have a lot of finishers, and even against decks like blue white control that run, let's say, like the standstill blue white standstill decks, you often they're going to have some counter spells, like they'll let you play some elves, but they're going to counter the big threats. And just, I found having maybe 2 threats is helpful, because sometimes they just don't have the counter magic for multiple threats in a row. So you can kind of just get them if they don't draw their wrath, like game 1, and they might counter your hermit. They'll probably counter your survival, but then you play biorhythm and win. Okay, so a couple other things I'd like to talk about. I guess what I'll talk about next is what's not here. So I do not run Tanglewire. So, and I haven't ran it in this build. In the updated build doesn't run it either. This list was designed in April of 2023. But the list I'm on now that I've changed probably recently in the last few weeks, although I'm not really playing competitive anymore because I just had a kid, like I said. So Tanglewire I actually cut, and I do want to credit Ale. Ale, I think his last name, I think Ale Rad. I put in the, anyway, I don't know his name, but he plays this deck a lot on the Magic Online, and in a podcast he mentioned how, like, Tanglewire is only good against decks that we're already good against, and I kind of believe that myself, and that's why I cut it, because it's I guess the nail in the coffin for this card for me was playing against decks like the Attunement Replenish. It's bad against those combo decks because they can just use Frantic Search, so they'll just untap their lands after you tap them. So they'll put the Frantic Search on the stack with this ability, and then they'll float their mana. Let the Tanglewire resolve, and then just play the Frantic Search on top all their lands, and so it's kind of dead against that deck, which is the Replenish Attunement Replenish blue white deck is probably one of the worst matchups of this deck. just having, we don't want to have our worst matches. We want cards that are good against our worst matchups, not the other way around. So it's bad against Burn as well, and it's sort of bad. It was bad against the. Of course, it's banned now, but the sort of the parfait decks. Land tax is banned, but it wasn't at the time of this video, or at the time of this me registering this list. But it's not good against really those decks either. It's not good against goblins because I just find that it slows you down as well. I mean, of course it's this is sort of a critical mass deck, and I find often the best thing for an elf deck are more elves. I mean, if you could draw a Multani's Alkalite or a Priest in an elf deck, wouldn't you rather just have that instead of something that just taps your opponent's stuff down? Or if you could just have a finisher just to win the game, wouldn't you rather have that? I mean, this doesn't really finish the game. It taps your opponents down, but often it's good against the mid-range decks like the Rock and Control, but I mean, really, I don't have an issue against those decks, right? So, I found that I'm probably against Control and Rock. I always usually win. I don't think with this list I lose maybe less than 20% of the time, I would say. So, a match that is. So I don't think it's fine enough of a matchup that I don't feel this is worth it to improve a already good matchup. Okay, so it's bad. Yeah, it's bad against Frantic Surge, but I also wanted to say it was bad against a lot of the graveyard decks, like a lot of the Hermit Druid decks. They still can go off at instant speed, and often they'll run things like Birds of Paradise, and they can just activate Hermit Druid. Like they'll usually get Hermit Druid down before you get Tangle Wire down, because they have acceleration too. They've got Lotus Petal and things, so it doesn't really stop them from winning the game either. Unfortunately, because they can yeah. So I found it didn't help there. So anyway, lastly, I guess I'd like to talk about the Wall of Roots. Wall of Roots is, I think, an amazing card, and I've been playing with this since January, and it's really been shining. I mean, it makes, in my opinion, matchups against goblins really possible, because you can, goblins and burn, you have a creature that they can't really get rid of easily and attack through easily, and it's a card where you, believe it or not, you might think that it's not wouldn't be as good as a mana elf, but I found it's often just as good. Sometimes I'm even happier to see this than an elf, because if you think about it, it makes a mana the turn you play it, which is helpful. So in a way, it virtually only costs one, because if you need the mana, you can sort of get the mana back the same turn, which you often can't do with your elves, especially if they don't have haste. The second thing is it's really great. It's just a cash cow of mana, because when you have Survival of the Fittest out, during a whole round, so you can make a mana during your turn and during your opponent's turn. So it has double the yield of mana than these elves typically do, for costing virtually the same except on turn one. But you can go ahead, and if you have Survival in play, you often, I find this is just enough. You use one to pitch something to get a squee, and then you pitch the squee on their turn, and then you draw the squee back, and you're ahead of card now. So it often with Survival of the Fittest, this often materializes into card advantage, the one extra mana, So it's quite good, and it's good against things like Ball Lightning, because it pretty much just trades, and you're happy to make that trade most of the time. It's good. It's also good in decks that really try to shoot down your creatures, because if often it won't die to burn. So if you have a Cradle in play, and they go and play Engineered Plague or Plague Spitter or Pyroclasm or things like that, or even they play a lot of burn. They'll play Lava Dart and things. Lava Dart or even against Grim Lavamancer, but all those things, won't really affect the Wall of Roots, and you're going to have this down on with your cradles, which you'll probably draw into a couple of them. It amounts to basically allowing the cradle to tap for one more mana. Often this deck gets in a really bad spot if they're wiping off all your creatures and you don't have a leg to stand on, and especially if you've got cradles in play. Those cradles are dead. Like if you've got a cradle in a forest. In this case, if you have no creatures, you've only got the one mana now. Now, if you've got the Wall of Roots, you've now got effectively 3 mana. So it's 2 extra mana, which I find is often enough to. If I draw a survival, the 3 mana is enough to play the survival and get it going again, or things like that. And it really helps me get out of a place where I'm too slow to. I'm kind of, it lets me get back in the game quickly, and often. So my opponent doesn't have too much time to stabilize. So that's that. I think that's everything. Or the sideboard. I mean, I don't know. I've won the tournament, so I don't think anyone can call me crazy about playing Pyroclasm and Elves. Yes, I think I'm the first person to do so. I'm not trying to be arrogant, but people were calling me crazy. I've heard it. People were saying you're crazy for playing Pyroclasm in an Elf deck. You don't know how this deck plays. I got a lot of criticism for it, but I faced goblins and I won. So the results speak for themselves. This card, it's there for goblins pretty much. But goblins was the only deck really I had a hard time with, and giving me a shot. I'm not really interested at all, in playing Magic or a deck where if I have a 10% chance of winning a certain matchup, I don't like playing that deck at all. I mean, I like playing decks where there's a reasonable chance of beating any deck, and I think that's important. I don't, that's just my preference, and Pyroclasm really helps. There's only 2 of them, but getting it basically, they'll never expect it coming either. The Goblins deck, and it's just you play it, you wipe their board entirely and you win. I used to be on Simoon, which does one. It's an instant speed too, but it does 1 damage and to only your opponent's creatures. But that's not going to cut it against goblins. So it's very good against the Ball Lightning, but it's not gonna. Against Burn, it was really good because they have a lot of 1 toughness creatures. But I don't think it's worth having a card for Burn. I already have the deck is capable of taking on Burn, but the Goblins is still a bit too strong. So that's why I have the Clasms. That's about it. And I had the space for it, so I decided to play them. I only play 1 Naturalize. That's to make room for a Tranquil Domain against Enchantress, basically. And there was a lot of Enchantress at the time, although I don't necessarily know if this card's particularly that useful anymore now that the land tax deck, Parfait, is banned. I may very well go back to 4 Naturalizes now. In fact, I think that's probably correct at this time. It's hard to say, though. It is good against some matchups like the Attunement Replenish deck, so I could see it still worthwhile to play over the 4th Naturalize. I like Octavia Orangutan. It's a fetchable source of artifact removal. It's very helpful. Just a lot of decks, you play that against a Mox Diamond, and it's a 3-for-1, and I've won a lot of games that way. They'll mull to 6 and play a Mox Diamond, and you play that, and if sometimes that's just game over for them because they don't have the mana to do anything. And it's just good, fetchable against the decks of the Stifle Knot decks have sort of fallen out of fashion these days, but this was really useful against them. 2 Ravenous Balos were in there. I'm not on the 2 anymore. I do keep 1 in, but the 2 Ravenous Balos, again, it's mainly a Goblin decision. One of the games I beat Goblins because this is a card that lets you turn the corner against Goblins. You don't want to just play a bunch of 1-drops and you want to be able to sometimes play this, and this all of a sudden presents a clock for your opponent. So if they're stalling and you're attacking with this, and it's pretty bulky, it can block things, and it really sets up a board presence where it makes the goblins difficult. It makes it sometimes difficult for them to attack you, and if they try to kill it or something, you just gain the life. So it's sort of good in that regard against burn as well. Unlike cards like Spike Feeder, this actually represents a card that can provide domination over the battlefield, which is important. Having, especially it's good with these three together, the two Ravenous Balos and a Genesis. Even having now two of them down really gives you an even greater edge over the battlefield. So where it's nearly impossible for them to attack profitably, and sometimes that's enough to get you to your Masticore or your win. So that was my rationale at the time. Anyway, thank you very much for watching again. I'll link the video to the updated list in the description below. And again, I'm happy to reach out if you'd like to talk. I'm more than happy to discuss on Discord. Maybe I'll put my link to Discord in the chat below. Send me a message. Anyway, thank you. Take care, and please, if you could like the video, if you like the video, I'd appreciate that. Thank you. Bye for now.